Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow Nuffield scholars. I would firstly like to thank the Nuffield Farming Scholarship Trust for putting their faith in me and allowing me to experience the life-changing event that is undertaking a Nuffield Farming Scholarship. I would also like to thank AHDB Beef and Lamb, and especially Clive Brown, for being fantastic sponsors and making the whole thing possible. Finally, I would like to thank my employers and my amazing family for supporting me through the experience and coping without me while I travelled for over 10 weeks around the UK, Europe, North America and Australia to learn more about my study topic of communicating carbon reduction schemes to farmers. So why carbon? My job allows me the great privilege of talking to farmers and growers about sustainable farm management. I've spent the last 8 years working at the Rural Business School at Duchy College running a range of resource management projects. For the last 4 years, I've also been working for the Farm Carbon Cutting Toolkit, a farmer-led organisation supporting farmers to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve business resilience. It has been through doing this work that the study question for my Nuffield became clear due to a commonly reoccurring problem. For many, reducing emissions from farm is not a business priority, and there is a lack of interest. My travels were therefore planned to try and answer two key questions. Firstly, what practices can we use to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and still maintain productive agriculture? And then secondly, how do we communicate these practices in a way which inspires engagement? So what are the issues when we're dealing with carbon and agriculture? This graph shows the breakdown of emissions from the UK and efforts that are needed to reach the targets set out by the Climate Change Act to limit global temperature rise. The graphic on the right shows the latest breakdown, which reveals that agriculture is responsible for 10% of UK emissions. So how can farmers reduce greenhouse gas emissions? For agriculture, carbon isn't really the main problem. There are three gases that make up this 10%: nitrous oxide, methane, and carbon dioxide. By adapting business management, we can drive efficient, sustainable systems that reduce emissions from agriculture. But choosing what to do and when requires thought and understanding. In the context of climate change, no other industry is as complicated as agriculture. One of the reasons why there hasn't been a simple regulatory policy is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer. We need to work with farmers to explore the options and work out what works for them. So how do we do it? Through my travels, I've been to see projects, farmers, researchers, campaigners, farming unions, universities, retailers, advisors, and others to try and find out what works in terms of getting the message across. A few key points have arisen. The first one is making it relevant. Graeme is a climate extension specialist working with farmers in the state of Victoria. There is a saying in Australia, you don't need to model climate change here, as farmers are already seeing the direct impacts. He has been using innovative methods to help farmers adapt to this changing climate, including developing the climate dogs. The Climate Dog Initiative uses humorous animations of sheepdogs to explain complex climatic phenomena to farmers and how these are changing over time. The Climate Dog Initiative links adaptation practices to something that farmers see the relevance of, namely the weather, and then uses this interest to talk about the impacts of climate change on the farm. Graeme regularly gets over 1,000 farmers attending his meetings. The second one is making it applicable. The Future Beef Project works in Northern Australia to better understand the links between greenhouse gas emissions, carbon stocks, land conditions, herd productivity and profitability. Farms were set up as research stations and then worked on issues that made sense to their business and were then evaluated in terms of their financial and carbon impact. Talking to some of the farmers involved in the project revealed that embedding the research on farm to provide specific answers gave them confidence in the results, and also started developing positive relationships with researchers. So how do we inspire action? The Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition is a farmer-led organisation in Vermont that was set up in 2016 to show that farm economic resilience and a clean lake can work together. As well as providing mentorship for other farmers and holding meetings to share ideas, the group regularly work with the general public, regulators and policymakers to show what's possible. When I met Brian Kemp, who is the current chairman and a beef farmer, he explained the appeal for other farmers. Extension is great, but as a farmer, you don't change what you're doing until you see it working. Farmers talking to farmers is one of the most powerful ways to change things, and providing opportunities to support farmer groups, demonstration and mentoring around reducing greenhouse gas emissions is something that we should be supporting and promoting here. In Scotland, the Scottish Government is funding the Farming for a Better Climate initiative. This project set up climate change focus farms to help producers understand where their emissions can be reduced with no loss of productivity. The great benefit of these focus farms is the opportunity for farmers to see what works, understand the benefits, and also assess the financial impact that comes from implementing these practices. All the focus farms in the first round managed to make financial savings of over £10,000 and cut their carbon emissions by 10%. A project that I visited in Australia was Farm 300, aimed at improving the knowledge and skills of livestock producers, leading to a 10% increase in productivity and a 30% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. The project was new and innovative as it worked with advisors and then funded support and coaching programs that hit the emissions reductions targets and were relevant to local need. Farmers were given one-on-one coaching as well as the opportunity to join in with discussion groups. The continual learning through coaching, rather than a one-off training event, allowed advisors to support farmers in an ongoing process. This project was a pilot, but it's been so successful it's been rolled out across the other MLA work strands. The other key point is making it count and the subject of metrics. I could do this whole presentation on metrics associated with emissions on farm and the issues that exist with current accounting tools and methodologies, although you'll be glad to know I'm not going to. What I learned through talking to organisations involved with measuring emissions within supply chains is that although metrics are incredibly important in terms of documenting change, they don't equal behavioural change. Behavioural change is achieved when metrics are used as a starting point for discussions between farmers to show what's possible. We need farmers to start to engage with carbon footprinting so that tools can be developed that are user-friendly, robust and relevant. Researchers and farmers need to work together. While we need detailed and accurate scientific data to document the efforts that are being taken, we also need simple, clear, factual messages for discussions with consumers. When dealing with climate change, there are lots of negative associations. We can't shy away from the fact that farming produces emissions, and this has led to lots of preconceptions and misunderstanding. Telling positive stories and making it personal by showcasing farmers who are making efforts to do things differently is pivotal to getting engagement. These pictures show some of the amazing farmers that I have met during my travels who are doing things differently. We need to tell their stories and let them inspire others. This will give confidence that it is possible and it can be done. If we don't tell these positive stories, then farming story will be told that those who have an alternative agenda. A great example of farmers engaging with the media and telling their stories is the Farmers for Climate Action initiative. Farmers were brought together who were already experiencing the impact of climate change and were given media training. These farmers were then called upon when stories hit the news about climate change to give the agricultural perspective, to dispel some of the myths, and to show what farmers are doing. They also looked at the issue from a different angle to create a cookbook, highlighting the impact global warming is having on food. Bringing these farmers together in a creative process cemented them, and their organisation is going from strength to strength. Working together, they have engaged the National Farmers Federation, become a member, and got the policy position changed so that there is now recognised climate change. Agriculture is unique in its opportunity to provide a positive side to the emissions issue. Not only does building soil organic matter have massive agronomic benefits for the farm business, but it may in the future provide an alternative income stream as we start to navigate through the maze of paying farmers for ecosystem services. Farmers I met in Australia are already being paid to sequester carbon under 25-year government-backed agreements, and in California, through the Healthy Soils Initiative, are being paid to adopt management practices that build soil carbon. These projects set the precedent for similar schemes to develop in the UK. So what do we need? We all need to work together to start to come up with solutions that work on farm, engage farmers, and deliver reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. This will involve everybody and requires sharing of ideas, collaboration, and innovation. We need to take carbon management on farm from a nice extra to a core management strategy that is embedded within business decisions and understood by the whole team. We need funding for on-farm research and skills development to equip the industry to deal with the challenges ahead. We need to include farmers in the discussion and not underestimate the importance of promoting locally relevant solutions that fit business need. As well as developing technologies and metrics that work, we cannot forget the importance of people, as it's farmers that will get these things done. And we need a forward-thinking, positive group of farmers to lead the way. I wonder where we might find one of those. The time to act is now. We cannot ignore this issue any longer. Farmers must take part in the debate and contribute to strategies that achieve emissions reductions, maintain food production, protect soil health, and safeguard businesses. So what next for me? As I said at the beginning, I have the great privilege of working with farmers around the UK. I have just started a new project to understand in more detail the potential for carbon sequestration and the impact of management practices on soil carbon levels. I'm continuing to work with more farmers to reduce emissions and showcase positive stories of great things happening within agriculture. I'm working in my role at Duchy College to ensure that all students leave with a thorough understanding of how they can reduce emissions on farm and the importance of soil health. Closer to home, I'm working with my community farm to discuss these issues with consumers and evaluate how low carbon fits into the local food movement. But this is just the start. Thank you very much.